This is Brian, screenfiles.com and review. What I'm looking at today is 1963's Dementia 13, directed by Francis Coppola. And by Francis Coppola, I mean Francis Ford Coppola, the man who's directed classics like The Godfather, The Godfather II, Apocalypse Now, and Dracula, by the way, as well as many others. And the reason I'm watching this movie is not because I tend to like older movies. I actually don't. Part of what bothers me is that people fetishize black and white films way too much, and I find it irritating. For instance, films are made in black and white because they had no choice. There was no color film at the time, which if there was, I guarantee you they would have used. So they made movies in black and white because that's all they had. And I don't like a lot that revolves around it. In any case, in 1963, Francis Coppola wrote and directed Dementia 13 for Roger Corman. And this is an odd movie in the sense that it's very much a product of its time, which is to say it hasn't aged particularly well. It's interesting, though it's kind of an odd duck in my view. First off, why is this called Dementia 13? I get the feeling Roger Corman had something to do with that. It doesn't really make any sense I could find why that would be the title of this movie. It doesn't fit. I expected something a lot more phantasmagorical, and this is not that. Another thing which is interesting about Dementia 13 is that it takes place in Ireland, and having watched the credits, it was actually shot in Ireland. Though you don't see much in the way of production value except for a castle it was shot in. I imagine that was the entire motivation for shooting this movie in Ireland. Namely, it was probably cheaper to do so than to shoot it in the United States. Because, as I said, the castle is the best bit of production value that this movie provides. Though besides that, there's no reason this needed to be shot in Ireland. It could have been shot on a studio backlot, and it would have worked just as well. So that's pretty weird. Though as a movie, Dementia 13 is watchable, and coming in at 1 hour and 14 minutes doesn't hurt, that's for sure. Though it's curiously empty, in a sense that the characters, there's no real characters in it per se. There are outlines of characters doing things, but there's no people really in this movie. Therefore, you don't really care about what's happening, or at least I didn't at any rate. Dementia 13 revolves around this couple who are in a really bad marriage. At least it feels that way. And for whatever reason, the husband, in a suit no less, wants to go on a rowboat. His wife, having seen him, goes with him. He mentions that he has a heart condition, which is very relevant because he tells her that if he dies, she gets nothing from his family. His mother lives in Scotland and is very well off. Though he has 2 other brothers and I think a sister? I could be off on that. And so, if he were to die, his wife would receive nothing. So, he dies. Now, keep in mind something. His wife didn't kill him. She just happened to be there. He has a heart attack. She disposes of the body, which is weird because, as I said, she didn't kill him. She could have just as easily rowed back to shore and let the authorities know that he died, though she's a bit of a gold digger, So she gets rid of the body and fakes a letter saying that he's away so that she is able to at least get a chance at getting that fortune. So she goes to Ireland to visit his family and is promptly dispatched by an axe-wielding killer. Oh, I should say she's dispatched after she was plotting to trick the mother into believing that her dead daughter was somehow communicating with her from beyond the grave. Now, how this would enable her to get the money, I'm not entirely sure, but this was her plan. Well, I should mention that the wife is probably the most fleshed out character in the movie, which is to say she's a terrible person, has little in the way of redeeming features, but she approaches human. Well, she's in an approximate distance to human, I should say, because she is still just an outline. Though in any case, she's dispatched by an axe-wielding killer. Her body vanishes. Doesn't bleed much because the killer just takes her body away. The movie goes on, and there's a groundskeeper who we encountered earlier who was looking around and found this, what he assumed was a dead body, and he's decapitated. This is pretty bold, actually. It happens at night. This is a black and white movie at night, so you're not going to get any of that red stuff, even if we're there, frankly. Though, for 1963, I imagine decapitating someone on screen was pretty serious business. And it happens here. I just kind of shrugged because I don't quite get what made this movie as horrific as its movie poster seems to describe. But then again, I did mention Roger Corman earlier, so I get the feeling a lot of things we see in this movie, despite being written and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, are due to him. Though eventually the killer is revealed, and I admit to not guessing the killer. The person who did it was a suspect in my mind, but as I said, unfortunately the movie doesn't give you enough information besides surface details to really tell why people are doing anything. Therefore, whether this person or that person is a killer doesn't really matter because you're not given enough information to make an informed opinion anyway. The reason I watched Dementia 13 is that this movie was remade in 2017. Review coming soon, and I think it's very hard to talk about a remake without seeing the original. That being said, the remake doesn't have a terribly high hurdle to clear, in the sense that as long as it fleshes the characters out better, it's going to be as good, if not better, than the original Dementia 13. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow. Peace.